Here we go. Welcome to the WTOP Huddle, the Super Bowl edition. Dave Johnson with Rob Woodfork, Chris Cichon, Dave Preston. But before we get to the Super Bowl, I think I was just reading this. It's mandatory. We have to start with the Washington football quarterback situation. Actually, a development there. Certainly, we've been talking about for the last couple of weeks possibilities of Matthew Stafford. It seemed like, I don't know if you want to call it the shining light, but certainly a shiny quarterback option out there that might be an option for Washington, no longer traded by the Detroit Lions to the Los Angeles Rams. So before we get to the Super Bowl, where to now? The Washington football team. Rob Woodfork, take her away. What's the plan now that Washington no longer is in the Matthew Stafford sweepstakes, although apparently they were?
Yeah, apparently they were. There was a report that they had offered a first-round pick, at least one first-round pick in that Stafford Derby, so to speak. And let's parse out the trade, shall we? Just real quick. So what Stafford represents for LA is a slight, ever so slight upgrade over Jared Goff. But I think what they paid to, I think what the Rams paid was more so to take that big, horrible Jared Goff contract off their books. So I think when people look at that, and I was guilty of this too initially, well, what will Deshaun Watson cost if this guy who, they couldn't wait to get rid of is worth 2 1s and, and all that compensation. It was really payment to get that big unwieldy contract off of their books. So I think in a Deshaun Watson trade, which obviously Washington would still be wise to try and get in on, it may not cost you quite that much, but then again, maybe it does. So really Washington, and we were discussing this before, you can't run it back with the guys you got. So standing pat is not an option. I think that, and I wish George was here because number one, he really hated the Stafford idea, and he even hates just as bad my push for Cam Newton, because quite frankly, he's not going to cost you that much. And he already knows the system. There's familiarity there. And if anything has been established since Coach Ron Rivera took over here, it's that he's all about putting the band back together, so to speak, and getting as many people that he's comfortable with here in this organization as possible. So I have a hard time seeing it be an option other than Cam Newton, unless, of course, they're able to work out something with the Houston Texans for Deshaun Watson and something that doesn't cripple their franchise moving forward. So as much as we'd love to see number 4 here, I still think Cheese Dolphins are at the front of the line in that derby.
Well, indeed. And so Cam Newton's your best option right now, looking at everything, and Stan Pat is not an option.
He's not the best player available, but he is the best option for Washington, and there is a difference.
Right. Okay. Chris Cichon, maybe Deshaun Watson, we don't think is in the realm of possibility. But for the record, I didn't think the Wizards were going to beat the Nets the other night and score 8 points in 8 seconds. So as long as it's still out there as a possibility, anything is possible. Your thoughts, though, now that Matthew Stafford is off the list?
And kudos to you on that call, Dave. By the way, that was an awesome end to the game. Listen to that on the radio network for the Wizards, and you just do an outstanding job there. Really exciting. This Wizards team might be coming along, but as far as Washington goes, I don't think we need to make a Russell Westbrook-type splash here in town. I think that there was a report that came out Saturday that really struck me. Former head coach Jay Gruden telling the Washington Post how the coaches and the staff and Kyle Smith, they would evaluate college guys and then they would have their pick and it would be ready. And Daniel Snyder would come in off of his yacht and make the pick. I think it almost helps now that the exposure has been made through the media, through the Post. And maybe Snyder will say, I'm not doing that anymore. And he gives these guys the opportunity to draft their own player. And somebody that I'm eyeing up at the number 19 spot, still somebody who, according to Roster Watch, which is one of the best independent evaluators of college talent and NFL. They said Mac Jones, they've been at the Senior Bowl all week. They said Mac Jones has had one of the best Senior Bowl practices, performances, metrics that they've seen in quite some time. And that's somebody who could be there at number 19. And if it's not him at 19, it could be a Kyle Trask type guy. I just think this draft class is too loaded to be leveraging and giving up all of these first round picks for a quarterback. Like Deshaun Watson is outstanding. He's top 3, he's top 4, but I don't want to be the Rams and give up 7 years in a row of first round picks. That's just a lot. The best organizations develop through the draft. So I just don't think they should get away from that. I think they should continue now with the Rivera staff in there, evaluate these college guys. You've got a big enough talent pool. Go with that. And it's funny how we don't talk about Taylor Heineke as a possibility anymore. It's like he was the flavor for a week or two, and we've like kind of moved off that, and that's fine. I don't know that I would be thinking, oh, I feel good about Heineke as the future here.
He should be in the mix. He should be able to compete for a roster spot. But I mean, that was a break glass in case of emergency situation, and I don't think you can go into the season feeling good about this guy being your starting quarterback. And Mac Jones. And this isn't his fault. This is no reflection on him. But when was the last time you saw an Alabama quarterback?
I agree. Yep. There are red flags there. Yeah. I think if you don't like him, you have other options in that range that you could maybe like a little bit more. Trey Lance from North Dakota State. I bring him up a lot. He might be top 10, but if he's there, that could be a good pick.
Yeah, for me, Alabama quarterbacks are almost like basically anybody from Duke. It's like you know what I'm saying? Like there are certain positions that don't necessarily translate to the pros, based on what it is that they're doing in college. So Mac Jones scares me a little bit, even though I agree with everything you're saying.
My family's from North Dakota, so maybe I should vote for North Dakota. From Grand Forks, North Dakota, my grandmother used to say, when you're from North Dakota, they ask you, what are you going to do during the summer? And they'd say, well, if it comes on a weekend, we'll have a picnic. It's cold up there for North Dakota. So we've got one Cam Newton or some kind of veteran option, Cheese leaning toward the draft. Dave Preston, the quarterback situation.
I think first and foremost, you have to see what you can do to upgrade the position, whether it's trading for Deshaun Watson or bringing in a veteran quarterback, because right now you've got Alex Smith, who there's no proof that he can last even 8 games, let alone 16. You have Taylor Heineke, who we've seen him in splashes, but that was with no one having tape on him. Now there's tape on him, and defensive coordinators are going to game plan for him. And, oh, by the way, this guy also gets hurt. You have Kyle Allen, who showed us a little bit of flash, but there's a reason why Kyle Allen is not a starter in the NFL. And guess what? He gets hurt too. So I think I wouldn't be surprised to see the team move forward and try to pick someone in the first or second round, or try to make the necessary trade. Deshaun Watson might not be in the cards for this team. That's a crying shame. Cam Newton is a name that we will hear until he retires, maybe even 10 years after Cam retires, just like Colt McCoy was always a possibility for this team. I think there are enough holes on this team elsewhere, too, that, as we've mentioned, you can't mortgage the future because by trading a ton of draft picks, because there's no guarantee you're going to even hit on the picks that you have. And the teams that do well over the years are those with a surplus of second and third round picks, players who don't have necessarily the first round attitude, but who have the first round skill that might drop to the second or slip to the third. So I hope they're able to do that. But in a quarterback league, you do need to have somebody competent, somebody who can be a starter for 16 games, whether you get them through the draft and grow them, whether you get them through free agency. That is a position that needs to be addressed this offseason for this team.
Yeah, well, it's probably a very good thing that George Wallace is not on this call, because I agree with Rob about Cam Newton, because I think the familiarity is key with Ryan, and that's Kyle Allen. The argument, of course, for bringing in Kyle Allen. So I think Cam Newton
actually, what Preston was saying, I'm sorry to cut you off. Actually, what Preston was saying calls to mind sort of a follow-up question then. How close do we think Washington is to Super Bowl contention? Because I think we're looking at this team through the prism of this team was good on defense. They could run the ball fairly consistently. I mean, it could have been better, but they were good running the football. They really were a quarterback away from being good. So I mean, how close are they to Super Bowl contention, and how far do you go all in on that? Because, I mean, there's been a lot of talk here over the last couple of weeks about the Green Bay Packers not going all in on trying to maximize their championship window with Aaron Rodgers, and that maybe cost them in these last two NFC championship games. Well, Washington is a team that historically kind of goes all in on going on a Super Bowl, whether they were close to it or not. This may be the closest they've been. I mean, how close do we think they are?
Well, I think that's it.
Yeah, I think that their defensive numbers may have been goosed a little bit by the fact that at times this past year, the offense was just so woefully inept that like the second half with Seattle, where they just basically kind of ran the clock out. The Rams, when they came to DC, they had the lead at the half, and they said, you know what, so they didn't put up huge numbers against this defense. I think the defense, the back seven, still needs to be vastly improved. And I think offensively, they're a quarterback away, but they're also another target for whoever that quarterback is away. They're still an offensive lineman maybe away from being a contender. But this is a league that it's a snapshot league. It's a turnaround league. If you can't get Deshaun Watson, I would get him, but I wouldn't overpay for a mid-level guy as far as trading a bunch to get somebody who's just okay.
Yeah, well, I think quarterback away is not like saying rounding up to the dollar. It's still a big get Washington needs to have. And the perfect example is who's in the Super Bowl. Elite quarterbacks, Patrick Mahomes and Tom Brady. And I don't see a situation like the Ravens of 2000, whatever that year, where you can get away without having an elite. You can't do that anymore. So I think so. The league is changed. The Trent Dilfer, right? And I'm forgetting the year, but
2000.
2000. There we go. Well, I got it right, but that's the bottom line. Quarterback away, and that's not that easy to get. And again, you're dancing so much on the fault line because it takes more than just the quarterback to win. So you can't give up every draft pick in your cupboard to get that quarterback. So that's what makes it a challenge. And that's why they have so many people in the front office that make the big bucks that have to sort this out. But it's clear that there's also, this is a league where there's a bit of a win now window always. And that's also part of the pressure. There's pieces on this Washington football team you want to take advantage of now, including on the offense, most notably Terry McLaurin. So that adds to the pressure. We just mentioned it's a Super Bowl that features elite quarterbacks. Patrick Mahomes, Tom Brady is 10th. That just blows me away.
Most organizations haven't been to 10 Super Bowls in history.
No, he's been
10 in 20 years. It's insane.
And he's 43, and he hinted it. Maybe he'll play beyond 45. So we'll see with that. With that, Chi, we'll start with you. Super Bowl. Your thought on the big story. What should we looking at this week? Of course, the Chiefs beat the Buccaneers, and Patrick Mahomes had the one-up during the regular season, 27-24.
Yeah, I think that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers win. I know it's going against the spread, but I just think that defensively, Tampa Bay is just good enough to limit Patrick Mahomes enough. You're not going to stop this Chiefs offense. They're going to put probably 27 to 30, 34, somewhere in that range. But the Chiefs don't really have an outstanding defense. I mean, they can get to the quarterback a little bit, but that plays right into Tom Brady's strengths with the quick dink and dunk and throw and getting the ball away quickly. And they've got a running game. Playoff Lenny is real. I mean, the guy was doing spin moves, getting into the end zone, and they're not going to have Antonio Brown, but Scotty Miller steps up, and this guy runs a 4-3, and they've got two adequate tight ends. Gronk, I mean, he's not exactly, looking nimble these days, but he can break off a 40-yard catch, and Cameron Brate's been. So to me, the Buccaneers, their roster is just the better roster when it comes to the well-roundedness of it, that I think Tampa Bay wins in an absolutely thriller. It might come down to a field goal at the end or last touchdown drive, but this is not going to be the year like when the Broncos absolutely smashed Cam Newton and the Carolina Panthers. I think we've got a good football game coming, and I think, I'm not calling it the National Fixed League or anything like that, but doesn't it just seem like, of course, the story is Tom Brady during a tough year for all of us goes and wins the Super Bowl. I mean, of course that happens. So that's what I think happens.
We should all have the timing and luck of the NFL, it would seem.
Right.
Rob Woodfork, the Super Bowl.
Well, first of all, just something stuck out there when Chi was talking. I just want to point this out. So because everybody gives me, or certain people give me grief about when I bring up race. If Scotty Miller was a black dude, we would talk more about how fast he is. That dude is a burner. Don't compare him to Wes Welker and all them other cats in New England. This guy's for real, and he's an X factor in this game. But but the thing that sticks out to me, and what I feel like I haven't heard too many people talk about, is that Patrick Mahomes is going to be playing behind a makeshift offensive line in this game. Both of the starting tackles for the Chiefs are going to be out for this game. One of their backup interior lineman is in COVID protocol, so he's probably not going to play. So they're going to be shorthanded up front. So if Patrick Mahomes, and he's fully capable of being able to account for those losses, that may be a big issue for this game. Because remember, the Buccaneers had 5 sacks of Aaron Rodgers. So he's a pretty mobile quarterback too. So I think that's going to have a big impact on this game. And as much as I want to resist and as much as I want to fight it, I do think the Buccaneers are going to end up pulling out this game, and that's going to be a big reason why. And honestly, it would be good to see the local kid, Byron Leftwich, be able to get that hardware. And hopefully it leads to more awareness that there are some really qualified coaches of color out there. And we brought this up last week, 4 out of the 6 coordinators in this game are black coaches. And I will hope that these guys can get jobs so we can stop talking about black coaches, because everybody's talking about, we keep bringing it up. We keep bringing it up because nobody's hiring these qualified candidates. So hopefully this brings the awareness, and hopefully that we get a game for the ages. If it's anything like the one that we saw in the regular season, we're going to be in for a treat on Sunday night.
Yeah, and for those coaches, Super Bowl, they tell me it's a pretty good thing to put on your resume. So makes you wonder why Eric Bieniemy hasn't been hired. But anyway, Dave Preston, the Super Bowl.
And again, to play off Rob's point there, regardless if Leftwich or Bieniemy get jobs, I can't imagine their press conferences be any worse than the one that we saw with the Philly.
The Nick Sirianni's. Oh my goodness.
Oh my, the thing is, but Dan Campbell's press conference with the biting kneecaps was so bad that the Eagles had to do so much worse to kind of eclipse that in a certain way. It wasn't maroon and black, but it was definitely close.
I mean, Sirianni said, "Hold my beer," and he actually looked like a dude who would say, "Hold my beer."
Yeah.
So, point taken.
And it actually hold my Zima. I think that's more his thing. I think I like Tampa because first and foremost, they're at home. They don't. I think in a normal year it wouldn't play into it as much, but with the pandemic, with the protocols, with the way that teams have to travel this week and this, that, the other thing, I think there's something to be said about the logistics, the hoops that the Chiefs are going to have to jump through over this next week going into the Super Bowl. That's one reason. And Tampa is at home. They can be extremely comfortable. 2, I like the Tampa Bay defense as opposed to the Chiefs defense. I like what they do, how they get after the quarterback. Rob and Chris have both talked about some of the situations. The 2 missed tackles, you can't discount that. Also, I think the Chiefs over the course of this season, they've been playing very fast and loose with a lot of close games that are much closer than they should have been. And they're still able to find ways to win. You look at the game that I think wrapped up home field advantage for them in the AFC, a missed extra point by the Atlanta Falcons, a sub-500 team getting them there. The game against Cleveland, where they definitely did quite a bit to put the Browns back into the game. Even the Bills, they were up 38-15, and instead of just putting their foot to the pedal and continuing to drive the Bills into the ground, they let Buffalo back into that game to where all of a sudden it was, oh my goodness, should they be going for 2? Should they not be going for 2? Which, if the Chiefs had continued to play up to their ability, shouldn't have even been a question. It reminds me, and we all cover different teams that do this over the years. Georgetown in 2008, coming off of their Final Four season, I think it was a Jeff Green team. They had a ton of games that they just seemingly pulled out of their socks. for lack of a non-family friendly term.
Right.
And it cost, and they wound up losing to Steph Curry and Davidson in the second round. And it was one of those seasons where they had so many miracle finishes, so many close games that shouldn't have been close games, that when you tempt fate enough, eventually fate gets you. And I think Tampa Bay does it, even if they don't wear those creamsicle uniforms, which I wish they did on Sunday.
Yes. Well, and I guess I'll make it unanimous with Tampa Bay. I think questions on the Chiefs offensive line right away, that is a red flag for me, even though Patrick Mahomes, if anybody can deal with a makeshift offensive line, it's Patrick Mahomes. But I think that Buccaneers defense is too good in that situation. And also the Tom Brady factor. I'll throw that out there, that he has won 6 titles. A guy named Michael Jordan has won 6 titles. Not that he's trying to one up Michael Jordan, but he has that kind of greatness like a Michael Jordan, that competitive fire like a Michael Jordan, clearly, that's led him to all the success that he's had. So I actually think the fact that the Buccaneers lost to the Chiefs in the regular season, even though Tom Brady smiles and keeps it calm at press conferences, I think that's more motivation for him, that he wants to beat the Chiefs, because that's the way Michael Jordan rolled in his day in the NBA. So I think the GOAT factor is involved in this Super Bowl as well. So
and actually, the GOAT factor kind of cuts both ways here, because this is a legacy. First of all, Tom Brady's legacy is safe. Whether he wins,
Right.
loses, draws, whatever, like, he is the GOAT. But if Patrick Mahomes finds a way to win this game, if he plays out of his mind, wins Super Bowl MVP, even without the starting tackles, and the defense has a letdown or what have you, if he wins this game head to head against Brady, it becomes a discussion again, especially if he gets a couple more championships.
yeah, and I think that's also a factor, because I was watching Tom Brady and Patrick Mahomes on an interview on NFL Network, and there's clearly mutual respect among the two. But I got to believe Tom Brady's thinking, all right, you're going to have your day, but I'm still in
He's
charge here.
literally old enough to be his father. Can we put that in context? He is 18.
Yeah.
It's the biggest age difference between starting quarterbacks in Super Bowl history. He is 18 plus years older than the guy he's going up against. That's just unbelievable.
And
Mr. Brady, I hope we have a good game. I hope he calls him Mr. Brady at some point.
Yeah, that's right, Mr. Brady. Well, again, unanimous on the Buccaneers. One more point about that big Wizards win on Sunday over the Nets.
Oh, please. Yes.
Last 25 seasons, in the final 10 seconds, when teams are trailing by 5 points, which the Wizards were, only 9 teams have won, and 23,498 teams have lost in those situations. So that clearly was a remarkable thing. And I'm saying that just to believe it really happened.
And I don't know if this came to mind for you guys, but the first thing I thought of was the Reggie Miller game against the Knicks. Yeah. I mean, I was like, this is the Reggie Miller game, except it's 2 different guys who hit the threes. That's right. I mean, it was unbelievable. I was just as mouth agape screaming at the TV as I was watching that game back in the day.
And again, the great footnote on that is that's why Scott Brooks had Garrison Matthews in the game. I don't think in his a month of Sundays, he thought Garrison Matthews was going to come up with a steal and lead to that. But that's why he was still in the fourth quarter, because you can make a difference in the NBA by just playing hard.
Is that a season saving win, Dave? They're 4-12. They're in a tough spot right now. But
but as Scott Brooks pointed out, that because of the COVID situation, the shutdown for 13 days, there are teams with as many losses as the Wizards have. So I think it's more than just PR spin to say there's 56 or whatever games left. There's a lot of basketball left. So sure. I don't think Russell Westbrook's forgotten how to play, and his 41-point performance in that game showed us that, okay, if he's really coming back and getting healthy, this team could be the force that, quite frankly, we all thought it was going to be on paper in preseason. You get to the regular season and all of a sudden, well, wait a minute, Russell Westbrook's not healthy. He's not playing in back-to-backs, and there's a pandemic, and then you got to shut down for 13 days, and it did alter the landscape. So it certainly gave you reason to pause and say, I understand the Brooklyn Nets don't play defense, but still
they have the worst defensive metric in the history of basketball. That's incredible.
But pulling out a win like that, says a lot, because I think everybody was ready to go home thinking it was over. And this is over for this week. We appreciate your time on the WTOP Huddle. Again, all Buccaneers will come back next week to talk about who was right and who was wrong.
Break.